Hi everyone! So we're starting a new lesson about quadratic equations. Quadratics are something with an x squared value as well as an x value a lot of the times, but particularly an x squared value. And we can solve these for x even though they're squared. There's several different ways that we can solve these. And we're going to go through them in all these different videos from this lesson. But the first one we're going to learn about right now is solving by graphing. Now, we can graph these by hand, and next year you'll definitely learn how to do that. But in this case, for this year, we're just going to learn how to graph them on a graphing calculator or on Desmos, and I'm going to show you what it is to solve them by graphing. So instead of going off of this notepad, we're going to go to Desmos. And Desmos.com is a graphing calculator online. You can definitely use it. If you'd prefer to use a graphing calculator, you're more than welcome to. So on these examples, what we're going to do is we're going to start by just graphing on a graphing calculator. So our first example is y is equal to x squared minus 6x, minus 6x plus 5. All right, so as you can see, it graphed in this red U shape. Now, what I want you to do on here is be able to recreate this U shape, but by picking a couple of points and plotting those points on your graph, on your paper. But what we're really looking for is where it crosses the x-axis, because where it crosses the x-axis is the solutions to these. So it crosses the x-axis right there and right there, which means my solutions are 1 and 5. Basically what that tells me is that x could be equal to 1 or x could be equal to 5, and both of those are considered answers or solutions. So for my first example, you want to redraw the graph that you see on your graphing paper and also say that your solutions are 1 and 5. Okay, so now let's graph the second equation, and I'm just going to delete this first equation. So we have y equals negative x squared this time, plus 8x minus 15. Notice on this one, because your x squared is negative, it turns the u upside down. It doesn't change what we're looking for. We're still looking for where it crosses the x-axis, which happens to be at those two numbers. So your two solutions in this case are 3 and 5. Notice it's really easy to do this, particularly if you're using a graphing calculator or Desmos. Like I said, this is what we're going to end up doing this year. Next year, I will definitely teach you how to graph it by hand, which makes it a little bit tougher, but this is just a really easy way to find the solutions to quadratics. Okay, let's talk about the third example. The third example is in a little bit of a different form, but we still are going to just graph it. So we have y is equal to negative 2, and then in parentheses, x plus 1, close parentheses, squared, plus 3. Even though it's in that different form, it still shows up as that u. It's an upside down u, but a u nonetheless. And we're looking for where it crosses the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis at these 2 points. These 2 points are decimals. That's totally fine. You're going to end up with some decimal answers on these self-checks. And so, and when we have decimal answers, we want to round them to the 10th or the first decimal point, which means my answers would be negative 2.2 and then 0.2. You could write the entire decimal out if you want, but I'm just asking you to round to the first decimal place. Okay, and then let's look at the last equation. So we've got y is equal to 2, and then in parentheses, x minus 4 squared plus 1. And now it turned back up, right side up. We're looking for where it crosses the x-axis. In this case, it doesn't cross the x-axis because the x-axis is below where it is. Even if I zoomed out, it's never going to cross that x-axis. I could keep on going forever and ever. And even though it looks now like it maybe is touching the x-axis, it's not. So, because it's not touching that x-axis, what that tells me is that there's no solutions. When it doesn't touch the x-axis, there's no points where it crosses, so that just means there's no answers, which means your answer is that there's no real solutions. And there we have it. That is how we graph quadratic equations and solve them by graphing.